Hello everyone, this is part 4 of What If Deku Married Toga, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. He listens to tires making their monotonous hiss over a rain-washed road, and it's almost enough to lull Naomasa to sleep, if not for the lukewarm coffee container that he periodically takes a sip from. Normally, the detective's mind would be matching the police cruise's pace of 1 mile per minute, but he has an equally exhausted underground hero to carry that burden for a while. Eraserhead's conspiracy theory had become his wallpaper, case files and newspaper articles covering every corner of his apartment. There's no longer any question why the man always looks so disgruntled and unkempt. Between crime organizations such as the Yakuza resurfacing and the Tokyo Ghoul turning Musutafu into its personal hunting grounds, Naomasa is able to empathize. They shared intel for a while and came to a similar conclusion in the end, or one that they could both agree on, at the very least. The Yakuza had ruled the underworld in the past, but the rise and prominence of heroes shone a light in the crevices that they had crawled out of. All Might in particular chipped away at those corners, bringing those organizations crumbling down to the point that the remnants were forced to live under constant surveillance. The Yakuza had become a dying species, like a dangerous animal placed in the zoo. Which means that the Yakuza must be under new management for them to try and reclaim what they had lost. Chisaki Kai is planning something. Now, the underground hero and the detective are sharing a ride at the expense of Tamakawa as their driver. Their investigations have blended together, creating a joint operation unlike any other. If the clues gathered from each of them thus far are any indication though, then it's bound to come to a close soon. They narrowed down a location, a mask shop. The police cruiser lurches into an abrupt stop, jostling Naomasa from his drowsy disposition. While the detective had been dozing off, the distance between Aizawa's apartment and the mask shop had been cleared. Tamakawa, wait here while Eraserhead and I go in. If anyone tries to run or if a fight breaks out, we may need you in the car for backup. Naomasa plays off his grogginess by giving orders. Aizawa is probably so used to doing the same that he's able to see right through the act, but the underground hero keeps quiet about it, and Naomasa is grateful for that discretion. Oh, why you've got it, boss. Tamakawa reluctantly affirms his response with a singular nod before Naomasa and Aizawa step out of the vehicle. The officer is then left there waiting with dreaded anticipation. An eerie feeling creeps up the policeman's spine since he's all alone on a quiet and desolate street, resulting in piloerection of his coat hair turning from sleek to furball. Tamakawa knows that he'll be reprimanded by Naomasa for misusing the radio, but he's desperate for some music to break the tension. The anthropomorphic cat turns up the volume on a random station and listens to a song that he recognizes as Butterfly from Miyavi. However, the mask shop that Naomasa and Aizawa enter has no music playing through its speakers at all. The dimly lit store is so quiet that they'd be able to hear a pin drop. Nobody is there to greet them either. It's almost as though the building had been completely abandoned, with only disposable masks left behind. Neither Naomasa nor Aizawa know whether they should call out or not. If the store is still occupied, then it might be wise to approach the situation delicately, considering nobody should have expected an underground hero or a detective to visit. On the other hand, the atmosphere that they walked into isn't an ordinary one and the element of surprise might be a good one to maintain. After a briefly exchanged glance between one another, Naomasa proceeds to keeping one hand concealed within his coat in case he needs to draw his weapon, and Aizawa folds his arms close to his chest in the event that he needs to use his capture scarf. Once they are prepared for a potential conflict, Naomasa takes the lead in calling out for anyone else who may be inhabiting the shop. Is there somebody here that I could speak with? Perhaps the shop owner. The detective raises his voice on the second sentence just to be certain that he can be heard. There's a brief period of silence, a moment where the only response is none at all. Then, the sound of shuffling fabric is accompanied by a dull voice, I'll be with you shortly. It matches the level of volume that Naomasa had been using. True to his word, what must be the store owner presents himself in a span of 8 seconds. What stands out about the lanky man with an undercut hairdo is the bandaged stump where his right arm should be. The gauze is red with dried blood. The shopkeeper must feel the gaze on his missing appendage, since he too glances down at it with mild interest, as though he too is just now noticing it. Pardon my neglection to what I hope will become new customers. As you can see, I was preoccupied. He gestures towards the stump with his good hand. Dissatisfied customer, Aizawa prompts the store owner with an amount of subtlety that makes the question comes off as casual instead of interrogative. It's not entirely disbelievable that a customer might lash out if they were angry enough, especially in a neighborhood like this, but Naomasa knows that the question presented by Aizawa is really an elaborate trap for the detective to use his lie-detecting quirk. The shopkeeper shakes their head, seemingly unbothered by Aizawa's remark. This is just from an accident that I had when using my equipment. It looks worse than it actually is. Naomasa is able to distinguish the difference between the truth and a lie thanks to his quirk, no matter how monotone of an answer somebody may give. That explanation given by the store owner is registered as a lie. In scenarios such as the one he has found himself in, the detective is forced to make a judgment call. There's a likelihood that he'll procure more results by revealing his reason for being there, but there's also a chance that the more direct route of flashing his badge will hinder the investigation further. Then there's the additional option of telling the shopkeeper about his quirk and whether that will influence the man to tell the truth or, in most cases, result in a request for his lawyer or an attempt to flee. Naomasa chooses to pull his police badge out and holds it up for the store owner to see. We have reason to believe otherwise. I'm Detective Scouchy Naomasa. He tilts his head in the direction of Aizawa, and this is the pro-hero Eraserhead. There's a few questions that we'd like you to answer truthfully in light of an investigation. It's a compromise. Naomasa applied pressure by raising awareness to the store owner about his shared company, but also refrained from giving details about the nature of the investigation. The detective also disclosed his quirk for the time being, hoping that he won't have to share that information in order to get an honest answer. The lanky man's demeanor doesn't indicate any panic, but his eyes do widen momentarily as a surprised response to the reveal of what he had assumed were two average customers. I see. Am I under accusation of something? Should I be concerned? The store owner slouches a bit to show the detective and the hero that he means no hostility towards them. Both Naomasa and Aizawa relax once they see that the store owner is willing to be cooperative. Not at the moment. Rather, we have concerns and accusations about the kind of clientele you have coming through here. Naomasa puts his badge away now that there's no more need for it. Like my detective friend has said, I'm a pro-hero. That's why I've been tracking the movements of a criminal organization as of late. It turns out that same criminal organization likes to frequently do business at your establishment. Care to explain? Aizawa takes the lead now that he and Naomasa are avoiding being long-winded. The mask maker is no longer capable of maintaining a poker face. Finally, a burst of emotion cracks the barrier that was put up to hide an expressive frown. I suppose there's no use lying to you if you've been monitoring my store. He hovers his remaining hand over the side of his body that lacks the other one. You were right in assuming that they were the ones who took one of my arms. Naomasa keeps his quirk activated during the duration of the store owner's response. When he's certain that the explanation wasn't a lie, the detective gives Aizawa a nod of assurance. That's all. They only frequented here for masks, but were unhappy with the product that you'd given them, and you were punished as a result. Aizawa tries to keep the skepticism that he's feeling out of his tone. The mask maker shakes his head as his lips pull from a frown into a small mirthless smile. Nobody ever leaves here unsatisfied with what I make for them. The smile levels out into a thin line once he's through being defensive about his craft. They were angry about something else and took it out on me, that's all. This next question is what will make or break the investigation. This next question will decide whether or not this mask shop is a game changer or a dead end. Naomasa depends on his quirk to answer him honestly when he asks, do you know what they were angry about? The shop owner diverts his eyes from the detective's rectangular ones, a reflex Naomasa has come to recognize as used by people when they are about to be dishonest. The mask maker recollects his composure, his blank face from earlier returning full force before he responds. Naomasa doesn't expect the truth to come out of the now inexpressive man's mouth. Not entirely, yet that answer treads a line that Naomasa's quirk can't quite determine as truth or lie. Luckily, the detective doesn't need to ask for an elaboration, the shopkeeper does so all on his own. There was a little girl, definitely abused and possibly meant for human trafficking. That part is the truth, but she got away while they were here. But that part requires some more specification. Naomasa has learned from the past that his quirk doesn't give an answer to half-truths. If someone withholds information while telling the truth, then it doesn't register as a lie. This drawback of his quirk is exploitable if anyone were to learn of it, but the store owner doesn't even know what Naomasa's quirk is yet. To be aware of this fatal flaw, Naomasa has to tread carefully in order to continue keeping that a secret while also obtaining the intel that he and Aizawa need. There's a natural concern for the safety of whatever child was mentioned in the shop owner's story, so Naomasa uses that to aid his ulterior motive by asking, "You mean the kid escaped from them?" If it isn't odd enough that the mask maker hesitates before answering, yes. The stranger thing is that Naomasa's lie detection quirk doesn't determine whether that direct response is an honest statement or a lie. The store owner is still withholding information, creating a pretense that's incredibly difficult to decrypt. There's something more to the story that the detective is being told, but he can't figure out what the metaphorical missing page has on it. There's a kid out there wandering the streets all alone. Aizawa's interjection is accompanied by the repositioning of his folded arms dropping and hanging down at his sides. The underground hero doesn't bother hiding the grim expression on his face, his worry for the missing child more than evident. Naomasa supposes the hardass actually has a soft spot for children, which would explain why someone like Aizawa would even bother teaching a bunch of highschoolers. Fortunately, that emotional outburst does stay true to Eraserhead's ideology of being logical at all times, prompting the store owner to specify more details about the kid. "I'm hopeful that someone came along and helped the girl." The shop owner quickly redirects his attention from Aizawa back to Naomasa. Otherwise, it would be safe to assume she didn't get very far and the Yakuza recaptured her, correct? Both the underground hero and detective mull over that suggestive statement. It's true that a child's legs wouldn't be able to carry them very far. There is also the matter of being in a big stone maze. All the buildings of the city on a dark night would be impossible to navigate for someone younger than a teenager. Even so, the investigative duo have a good reason to doubt that claim. Naomasa catches Aizawa's gaze from the corner of his eyes. Both of them are thinking on the same wavelength, each of them considering the result of the lie detection quirk. The masked craftsman gave an indirect response to the underground hero's question, making it difficult for the detective's quirk to differentiate his answer between a lie or honest truth, but it still gives an indecisive answer of its own. Either the store owner believes his own lie, or he's genuinely that hopeful that somebody helped the lost girl. Quick deductive reasoning helps Naomasa make his own assumption though. He believes the shopkeeper knows for certain that somebody is helping the girl. Naomasa slides a hand into the interior pocket of his overcoat, digging for his wallet so that he can produce one of the many business cards that he carries within it. "You make a good point, mister." The detective suddenly realizes that he never caught the man's name. "Uta. Pardon me for not introducing myself sooner." The masked craftsman bows in apology before taking the business card that Naomasa holds out for him to grab. Naomasa resists raising a brow in suspicion, his curiosity making a mental note that he was only given a singular name. There's no way of knowing whether Uta serves as a first or last name, but there's also no way to confirm whether that is intentional or not. "Uta, you've made a fair point. It'd probably be best that my partner and I sweep the area to see if we can catch up to her." Naomasa continues from where he left off as he gestures towards the calling card. "If you remember anything else of significance, please don't hesitate to contact me at my office." If Uta has any suspicions of his own, then he does a good job of covering it up as well. It's not uncommon for criminals to maintain a good poker face. It's one of the necessities to have if you wish to survive in their underworld. However, in all his years of law enforcement, Naomasa can confidently say that the shopkeeper's vacant expression is the most unreadable he's ever seen. Of course, Uta slides the business card into one of his pants pockets. "I wish you the best of luck." Naomasa tips his hat before heading for the exit, Aizawa in tow with characteristic silence. It's only once the two of them have made it outside that the underground hero raises his questions. "Why aren't we taking him into custody? We have plenty enough reason to believe he's lying." "Not entirely." Naomasa huffs in equal frustration. "It's hard to tell what he's keeping from us, even with my quirk. I think it's for the best that we take a less direct approach." "What do you have in mind?" Aizawa's interested tone betrays his stoic expression. Naomasa waits until they've made it back to the police cruiser, not willing to take any chance that Uta could somehow overhear them. At the volume that Tamakawa is blasting music on the radio, it'd be impossible. Tamakawa switches the sound off with cat-like reflexes, startled by the passenger doors opening, his raised triangular ears drooping slightly once he realizes it's only Eraserhead and his superior. I think we should stage a stakeout here. We'll have 2 officers watch the store on a regular basis. They'll be on the lookout for anyone with a young girl. Naomasa answers Aizawa without a shred of context or acknowledgement for Tamakawa. You don't think that's a little too hopeful? There could be several people passing through here who match that description for all we know. Aizawa's slouched posture sinks into the back seat's cushioning as he inquires Naomasa with a gaze through the rearview mirror. The detective doesn't bother turning his head, he returns the stare with one of his own, still facing forward. Aizawa's demeanor doesn't look comfortable at all, despite the way he's taking up the back of the car. How many parents or babysitters would take their children to a mask shop? Let alone in this kind of neighborhood. Naomasa notices his words of assurance are enough to make Aizawa visibly relax a little more. The investigation has taken a heavy toll on them both, but the underground hero looks as though he's ready to take any available moment to sleep. Naomasa's rhetorical question doesn't go unanswered, but it's not Aizawa that gives the response. Not very responsible ones. Tamakawa inserts himself into the conversation. When his joke doesn't get anything less than a turn in his direction from the 2 others in the car, he supports it with an awkward chuckle of his own. Sorry, I just wanted to be included. Who or what are we talking about, exactly? The officer's ears droop in an angle acute to his whiskers as he shrinks in on himself. It's nothing for you to be concerned with. Just take us back to the precinct. Naomasa clicks his seatbelt into place while waving his free hand dismissively. Tamakawa had done enough already, the stakeout would be reserved for other officers. An exasperated sigh from the backseat returns Naomasa's gaze to the rearview mirror, and he sees that Aizawa now has his eyes closed to complete the exhausted appearance he'd been working on. Actually, could you drop me off at the nearest train station? I'm going to visit Sir Nightie's agency and get his input on the Yakuza. So long as there's a child involved, I don't think we have the leisure of taking things slowly like he originally planned. Naomasa now understands why Aizawa dreads the remainder of the night from the sheer volume of that request alone. It seems they were wrong. The mask shop wasn't the finish line. It was the starting line. The investigation into the Tokyo Ghoul and the Yakuza have intersected, but that doesn't change the fact that they've only just begun. Akitani's night had just begun, or so it felt like. He'd given Eri his bed to sleep in, it's not like he used it for much other than comfort anyways, but that left him with very little to relax on. Chalk it up as just another cost of his quirk, but Akitani is more of a nocturnal creature in habit. The boy-turned-nightly predator was used to going on the prowl during this time, but he wasn't about to leave Eri all alone. So, Akitani is currently left standing idly in his apartment. To pass the time, Akitani is left with only his thoughts. Usually, thinking to himself only brought up feelings of angst and self-loathing, but now he has Eri to focus on. He has no idea how to take care of a little girl, he's still practically a kid himself. Yet, this duty has fallen unto him. If he's an animal, then he must protect the cub that he's adopted into his dwelling. He worries about the Yakuza and whether or not they'll keep their promise. He's confident in his ability to fight and kill just about anyone, but he's not so sure about an entire Japanese mafia. Akitani snaps out of his thoughts when his ears twitch at the distant sound of police sirens. His body is tense and his mind is sharp until the sound fades. He never knows if the sirens are coming for him. He can only hope they're going for the Yakuza. The tension in his body deflates with a not-so-relieved sigh. While he doesn't have to worry about criminals and cops tonight, he does have to worry about food. Maybe not for himself, but Eri is a growing girl who will surely need breakfast when she wakes up. Akitani opens his fridge despite already knowing there's nothing inside of it. He does the same with all of his kitchen cabinets. He's never had the need to keep regular food stashed when he can't necessarily eat regular food without gagging. He tries to remember what tasted good to him before his quirk eliminated his ability to taste normal meals. What would Eri like? He supposes he can go grocery shopping with her after his shift tomorrow. He suddenly realizes he has to work in the morning. At least he works in a coffee shop with a bakery. He'll just take Eri with him and she can have some sort of pastry for breakfast. It may not be the healthiest thing for a child, but it's not like she'll be having candy apples every day. At least, that's what he thinks. The sun rose like a flower opening, the clouds speckled around its bright glow fluttering in the sky like falling petals. A light shower washes into the soil beneath that shining flower. Raindrops are colored by its radiant beams, blushing scarlet and warming to tangerine. The illuminated clouds, still beneath the ethereal glow, fog up the sky like a mirror. It's the first thing Eri sees when she wakes up in the morning. A clear reflection of herself in the window that shimmers thanks to a glassy sky. The young girl's lip quivers as she worries that she may still be dreaming. Nobody has stormed into her room to yank away the warmth of her blanket. No one barged through the door to take her away from the comfort of her bed. It was the first time in a long time that she'd woken up peacefully. It seems too good to be true. Then she recalls the previous night. The boy who had rescued her from the people who did her harm. He'd taken her to this place. To his place, she remembers. Like the boy is different from the men who hurt her, this place is different from the one that horrified her. I apologize, it'll just be another 10 minutes. Eri suddenly hears the aforementioned boy. She contradicts her earlier feelings by cowering to the furthest corner from the muffled source of his voice. Her knees come up to her chest as she curls in on herself. She doesn't know who the boy is talking to, but she knows from experience in the other place that he could be bringing somebody bad to see her. Just in case, she wants to be as far away as possible from the door. Eri internally begs for the boy and whoever he's talking to just go away, but the voice only gets closer. No, no, I'm not sick. Eri shudders before she tenses when she hears that. The men who hurt her always told her she was sick when taking her to see the doctors. I'll be able to come in, it'll just be a little later than usual. The boy pauses and Eri is confused when she doesn't hear anyone other than him despite a response. Thank you for understanding. Eri closes her eyes when she hears the door click and the wood beginning to creak as it opens. Hello, are you up yet? The boy changes his tone and volume from what she heard just seconds ago to a much more hushed whisper. Again, he's different. The people she was with would have yelled at her to wake up. Since he's proving himself to be much nicer than the bad guys she was with before, she dares to open her eyes at least. Oh, did you fall out of bed? The boy has hair the opposite color of her own that hangs to one side when he his head. Eri doesn't know if she'll get in trouble for saying she did, and she actually didn't, so she shakes her head to answer without having to respond aloud. The boy visibly relaxes at that and Eri can't help but mimic him, relieved to know she gave the right answer. His gaze shifts from her to a nightstand where the candle he had lit for the night has long gone out. Sorry that I didn't have a nightlight or anything to give you. Did you sleep well anyways? When the boy sees her shrug, he has a hard time holding back a pensive frown. I would have let you sleep in a while longer, but I didn't want you to get scared if I left you here alone. When he sees her recoil at the sight of his expression, he makes sure to quickly hide it with an assuring smile. Plus I figured you would be hungry. Wanna come with me to get some food? At the mention of food, Eri perks up a little. Her mouth waters and her eyes glimmer like a red opposing force of the blue sky. The little horn on her head slashes the air as she nods. The boy's smile becomes more genuine as he soaks up the radiating cuteness. Eri forgets all about whoever the boy was talking to earlier, unaware that it had just simply been him calling in to let his employer know about his tardiness, finally lowering her defense. Eri is about to follow the boy when he stops abruptly, making her take a step back. He glances back at her, and she worries that she may have done something wrong. She knows better than to run away, so she tenses up instead, preparing for a hit or worse. What happens instead surprises her more than anything else that has up to this point. He apologizes to her. Sorry, Eri. I just realized I don't have any clean clothes for you either. It's just something we'll add to the shopping list. Eri has to hold back the tears that threaten to spill. Normally, right about now, the only thing that would be spilling would be her blood. She's so grateful for the kind boy in front of her that she wants to tell him so. Shyly, the little girl grabs the hem of the oversized hoodie he gave her last night, already content with it as a form of clothing and not needing more. It's okay, is all she manages to squeak out. That's more than enough. The boy's smile lights up brighter than the sun itself that greeted her this morning. Eri has to shield her eyes, so she doesn't see him extend his hand for her to take until he says, "We should get going then." When she does see the hand waiting for her to take, she hesitates to take it. Anytime the masked man's hands touched her, she'd feel lots of pain. The boy notices and is about to retract his offer, but Eri braves the contact and surprisingly takes his hand anyways. Each of them content, they venture outside the apartment. Eri keeps her head down most of the time and the boy does most of the talking, but it's not a bad experience for either. The two take the time to become acquainted with one another's company at the very least. After a while, Eri even begins to respond with small nods or shakes of her head. It's a pleasant walk to Anteiku. Unlike yesterday's bitter bite of the cold, there's a welcoming warmth that makes it believably summer. When they inevitably reach the coffee shop, the boy even lets Eri come with him behind the counter. The little girl is struck with awe once she sees the pastries on display. Rows of karapan are met with stacks of taiyaki. Cases with cakes and cookies inside are just out of reach from her tiny height. Freshly baked buns and muffins sit on plates, waiting to be served and eaten. Take whatever you want. I get a worker discount, the boy says, completely unaware that he'd be paying for it all if Eri really had her way. Instead, she meekly points at the caramel-coated apples, silently asking for one of those. The boy obliges and sets her up at an empty table with the candy apple. He also gives her some crayons and the kids' menu to play with, along with a cup of hot chocolate. I've got some work to do, so I won't be able to sit with you, he's quick to say the rest when he sees Eri meet his gaze frightfully, but don't worry, I'll be around this area serving other people if you need me. He doesn't blink or look away. One emerald eye peers into the red of Eri's eyes as he promises her, I won't let you leave my sight. Satisfied with the boy's vow to keep watching her to make sure she won't be taken by the bad men again, Eri works up the courage to verbally respond. Oh okay, and that satisfies the boy in return. He nods with another assuring smile before going back behind the counter. True to his word, Eri's table is in view from there. An older man with his white hair swept back and eyes closed then joins the boy behind the counter. He'd watched the whole interaction from afar, and held his tongue until now. Mikumo, who's that girl you've brought? Is she the reason why you came in late for your shift? He has a tranquilizing composure as he tucks his arms behind his back. Yoshimura-san, Akatani Mikumo greets his boss with a bow. I must apologize. That's Eri. She's my sister. Akatani pauses as he searches for the right explanation before continuing. I normally don't have to, but I've been tasked with watching her for a while. Is it okay if I bring her to work with me? Anteiku's owner gauges the two with a considerate hum. I suppose she won't be too much trouble. She does appear to be well behaved. Akatani lets out a breath that he'd been holding in when he hears Yoshimura's verdict. Perhaps, he'd done so too soon. Yoshimura adds, if we have to fill seats and there's no other tables available though, your sister won't be allowed to occupy that space. Customers are the priority. Begrudgingly, Akatani accepts those terms. He just hopes such a situation doesn't arise. Fortunately for him and Eri, he only has to work the morning shift today and not the whole day, so that lessens the odds. In the meantime, I think I have an All Might coloring book in the back that you can give her. Yoshimura smiles when he sees Akatani perk up at the offer. That'd be great. I'm sure Eri would love that. Thank you, sir. Akatani returns his boss smile with one of his own. Yoshimura disappears into the back to find the aforementioned coloring book once he sees how happy it'll make the kids. He later returns with it, much to their elation. It's enough to keep Eri occupied for most of Akatani's shift, which is mostly just orders to go and not to stay, gracing the two with good fortune. Towards the end of Akatani's shift, a familiar set of blonde buns comes skipping into the shop. Akatani. Akatani, the owner of that hair cheers the boy's name in greeting, much to his dismay. Good morning, Himiko. Akatani ducks his head in embarrassment while trying to hide his blush behind the cash register. Only a few customers glance in the direction but the boy still can't hardly take it. Even Eri shifted her attention from what she's drawing to them. Reminded of Eri, Akatani works his way around the counter to introduce the two girls. You remember Eri? He says more than asks. Of course. How could I forget such a cute face? Himiko hops with adoration for the younger girl. Eri shrinks at the attention, but doesn't flinch. Akatani figures she remembers Himiko from that night as well. Watch a drawing. Toga coos over the amateur art that's on the table. One looks like a cat, another a fish, but what really makes her squeal with delight is the one that looks like a cross between an octopus and a boy. The tentacles coming out of the boy's back is much too similar to what Akatani's quirk looks like. Looks like you got a fan, Akatani. Himiko's teasing causes the boy and Eri to blush. Himiko takes it upon herself to get better acquainted with the other girl, plopping down in the seat opposite of her. So you like to draw, huh? Me too. Mind if I join you? The question prompts Eri to check with Akatani first, who nods with a smile to let her know it's okay. Himiko flashes one of her toothy grins when Eri hands her a crayon, the color red in particular. Red is my favorite. Thanks, Eri. The blonde already begins doodling like a child herself. Happy to see the two girls getting along, Akatani takes it as an opportunity to ask Himiko something that's been on his mind. Himiko? The girl glances up from her drawing to acknowledge the boy. I have to go shopping later, because Eri needs food and clothes. Since I can't really taste anything and I don't really know what girls like to wear, I was kinda hoping. Ooh, a shopping trip. Count me in. Himiko picks up on what Akatani is asking before he can even finish. With a flick and twirl of the crayon between her fingers, she points it at the barista. I've always wanted to go to the mall in the Kiashi ward. I bet we can find all sorts of cute outfits for Eri there. The blonde begins bouncing in her seat with excitement over the mere prospect of it. Akatani hums in both humble agreement and relief that he'll be getting a girl's opinion. He's not sure that he'd be able to do it without the help. But first, Akatani diverts his attention back to Eri. If that's okay with Eri, then that sounds great. The little girl glances up with uncertainty. Does that sound good to you? She takes the time to consider the proposition, not wanting to upset anybody based on her choice. Her tiny head flicks back and forth between Himiko and Akatani before bobbing in a nod. Great. Himiko startles her with a burst of joy before reaching across the table to take her hands in her own. We're going to have so much fun together, but that promise between girls causes Eri to blush with a twinkle in her eye. The glee is contagious and Eri begins anticipating the outing as well. Smiling in content, Akatani begins to back away. I have to get back to work now. You two keep each other company until I'm done and then we'll go. Okay. He's surprised when neither of the girls pout or complain about him leaving. They really are good for one another, he thinks. Once the boy goes to serve customers, Himiko goes back to admiring the drawing of Akatani. Her toothy grin is complemented by a light blush. Eri, do you want to know a secret? The blonde looks up to see the other girl tilting her head in curiosity. As Himiko uses her red crayon to create a shape around Eri's picture of Akatani, she giggles. Only after she finishes making the heart does she lean in to whisper her secret. I like Akatani too. The next couple of hours go by with Akatani being none the wiser as to what Himiko is telling Eri. All he knows is that they're both blushing and occupying themselves with each other, and that's enough for him. It's the first time he's seen somebody manage to make Himiko sit still. It's the first time he's seen Eri open up to somebody other than himself. That's all he could ask for and that's all he cares to know or see. Once finished with his shift, Akatani folds his apron under his arm. Are you two ready to go? He asks the two girls while removing his namatag. Without hesitation, Himiko hops to her feet with the same amount of energy she had since this morning. Eri is a little more hesitant to put down the crayon she's holding, but she nods her head in confirmation. Akatani sneaks a peek at what she stopped drawing, grinning like a goofball when he sees a picture of what's meant to be Himiko. Now able to tease the blonde the same way she teased him, he turns on her. Looks like I'm not the only one with a fan. Eri ducks her head to hide a blush, but Himiko doesn't share her embarrassment. Instead, the blonde giggles with her same unwavering grin full of sharp canines. You dare attempt to use my own spells against me, Akatani? She feigns a tut before twirling around in self-presentation. Besides, who wouldn't be a fan of me? Akatani's plan backfires, having the opposite effect. He stands there like a dope, wondering how he winded up being the one who's a blushing mess again. Luckily, before Himiko can mercilessly continue her assault, Eri comes to his rescue by tugging on his pants leg. When Akatani looks down, he sees the little girl holding her hand out, waiting for it to be taken. In such a short amount of time, she's no longer fearful of his touch. He feels the warmth of pride blossom in his heart and gently takes her hand in his. Not wanting to feel left out, Himiko begins to feign a pout. How come you won't hold my hand like that? She crouches down to Eri's height and holds out a palm like a person trying to gain an animal's trust. Will you hold my hand too, Eri? She bats her eyelashes for further dramatic effect. Eri glances up at Akatani, silently asking for permission. Wanting to assure her that Himiko is safe, he nods. Having already spent so much of the day with the other girl, Eri puts her trust in Himiko by lending her other hand. The blonde grins ear to ear with glee, bouncing back to her full height. The trio then embarks on their long-awaited journey. The three of them connected, hand in hand, Eri in the middle. Himiko gets Eri to swing their arms together, as well as attempts to get Akatani to join in. When Akatani sees the hopeful gleam in Eri's eye, he has no choice but to go along with it. Where he draws the line though, is when Himiko tries getting them all to skip with her. He won't deny Eri the fun, but he himself refuses to skip. Especially when Himiko suspiciously has her phone pointed at him like she's about to record. When they finally get to the mall, Eri's eyes light up like a Christmas tree. She stands in place, awe evident in her expression. Akatani can barely contain his laugh. He hadn't seen her like that since she saw the library he calls a house. Himiko giggles when she notices Eri's state of stupor too, giving the tiny girl's hand a soft squeeze. Which store do you wanna go to first? Akatani worries the hyper blonde is somehow passing her energy through to Eri via their hands like an extension cord. Unsure of herself, but still overly eager to explore, Eri continues her habit of checking with Akatani. The boy shrugs, not knowing which store to pick either. Hesitantly, he glances at Himiko, silently asking for her to decide. The blonde had been waiting for the opportunity with a knowing grin. Himiko starts to pull them towards some sort of clothing store, outfits for Eri first. Food later, she shouts her executive decision. With that decided, the three wind up looking through clothes for hours. Well, mostly Himiko sorting through every outfit she deems cute enough for Eri while Akatani watches from the sidelines. Himiko rolls her eyes, "You're clueless," as she tosses a pink top with cats made of glitter at Akatani. When he glances between the shirt and the girls, seeing how overjoyed they are about it, he hums in agreement. He'll never understand their fashion sense. As Akatani waits for them to try the clothes on in the fitting rooms, he's relieved that he didn't distract himself with focusing on what they're wearing. Since he was able to keep his guard up, and let his instincts alert him to the man who's been following him around since they'd left Anteiku. The hairs on his arms and the back of his neck stand up when he realizes they have a stalker. It could just be some creep, but his first thought is an alarming concern that it could be a detective tailing him or the Yakuza keeping tabs. He doesn't know which would be worse. Akatani figures now is the opportune moment for the stalker to be dealt with. While Himiko and Eri are occupied, he'll lure the person into a trap and eliminate them, as not to worry either of the girls. Akatani begins by straying from the fitting rooms only slightly, planning on leading them to some place more secluded but not too far as to raise suspicion. Akatani begins to size the guy up. He's slim, which means he could be fast. Large circular eyes with heavy bags, something that could have to do with their quirk. Except, they also have a noticeably large mouth. A casual purple dress shirt and grey pants gives nothing about them away and would actually help them to blend into the crowd. Akatani grits his teeth since he's having trouble determining the danger level, but doesn't show any outward signs of aggression otherwise. Not yet. Not until he turns this next corner and uses an appendage from his kagoon to grab a trash can. So that when the stalker turns the corner too, he can throw the heavy metal cylinder at them. Except, when the stalker does follow along, they aren't struck by the object. Instead, they open their mouth wide and swallow it whole. Akatani's own eyes widen almost as large as theirs. Once he shakes off the initial surprise though, he's quick to release the other tentacles that make up his predatory organ. "Why are you following us?" Akatani keeps his voice low so that he doesn't draw any undesired attention. He doesn't diminish the amount of aggression in his tone though. He wants the stalker to feel threatened. The stalker does look panicked, but probably not for that reason. "You weren't supposed to notice me." They take a step back as though they're going to flee. Akatani flicks one of his appendages so that it splits the ground and throws the man off balance. No, I'm not supposed to eat. He said just to follow." The man is in a full-fledged panic now. At least Akatani is able to garner enough information from the shouting to figure out he was sent by somebody else to follow him. Who told you to follow us? Tell me who. Akatani takes a step towards the man so he can start closing the distance between them. He also doesn't want to allow an opportunity for the man to escape. When Akatani's Kagoon gets too close, the man makes an attempt to bite one. The appendages being beyond flexible, they easily evade the gnashing teeth. All the futile attack does is anger Akatani. Akatani's Kakugan activates, veins spreading from his darkened eye as he bares his own fangs. You like to eat, huh? The girl crouches as it readies to pounce. I do too. When Eri and Himiko exit the changing rooms, they find Akatani waiting for them in the same place that they left him. Eri is none the wiser as she runs over to show him the outfits that she's officially chosen. Himiko, on the other hand, smells the intoxicating scent of blood wafting off him. She grabs hold of an arm as they leave the store, nuzzling it with her head like an affectionate kitten. Tired from walking, Eri clings to the other arm as he carries her. Let's go get you some food. Akatani figures it's their turn to eat now. Nobody would believe the legendary All Might is the same trembling anxious man entering the Naitei agency. Toshinori fiddles with the loose tie around his neck, tightening it and then loosening it all over again. He hadn't seen or spoken with his former sidekick for so long that he has half a mind to turn around and leave while he still can. Yet, his conversation with Naomasa replays itself in the back of his mind. That talk reminds him of what's so important that he took the chance of coming here. He needs to find a successor before it's too late. At the front desk is a familiar face, the pro-hero called Centipeder on account of his head that quite literally resembles a centipede. A scarf wraps around the man's neck, owning the look by making it appear like a centipede's tail. Toshinori waves politely in greeting. I'm here to see Mirai. Is he available? Centipeder glances briefly at the calendar on his desk before returning his gaze to the fellow pro-hero. He's currently in a meeting. That's all Toshinori needs to hear to have an excuse in order to back out. I wouldn't want to be a bother. I'll come back another time. He cuts Centipeder off a little too hastily while waving his arms in a manner far too exaggerated to be allaying. Not at all, but Centipeder is quick to prevent the blonde from leaving that easily. He even stands up, in case he needs to chase the hero down. I'm sure Sir would be more than happy to see you. As a matter of fact, his meeting is nearly over anyways. He gives some assurances before gesturing to the elevator. Feel free to head up to his office. Toshinori is about to decline, but one look at Centipeder tells him that whatever he says won't work. So, he swallows whatever words were about to leave his mouth, and he nods with a shaky smile instead. If you insist. The blonde is a nervous wreck all over again as he steps onto the elevator. He starts wondering if he should have taken Naomasa's advice and invited Mirai to coffee instead. Maybe a public setting would have put him more at ease. Then again, they wouldn't be able to openly discuss his search for a successor with potential eavesdroppers. He wonders if that'd be for the better. Maybe he should have started small and just caught up with one another first. To say the least, it was a long elevator ride up. When Toshinori does reach Naitai's office, he finds Bubble Girl seated out front. She's in the middle of writing something when she pauses and looks up to see him. The blue-skinned girl brightens with a smile as she greets him. Oh. What a pleasant surprise. Toshinori returns her smile, but not her gaze. He's too busy trying to see who Naitei is meeting in his office. I hear Mirai is already with someone. Is it okay if I go in or should I wait here? He asks the question with the hopes that she'll tell him to sit and wait. He prays for more time to prepare himself for the long-awaited reunion. Bubble Girl glances over her shoulder, peering into the office as well. The glass wall between them hides nothing. Sir Naitei is indeed in a meeting. With Shota Aizawa, the underground hero, a razorhead. The contrast between Aizawa's scruffy appearance with baggy clothes and Mirai's parted hair with plain office clothes is laughable. Naitei happens to divert his attention from Eraserhead at that exact moment, taking notice of his new visitor. The stern expression on his face softens for a split second in surprise, but returns full force as he pushes his glasses back up the bridge of his nose. He motions for Bubble Girl to send Toshinori in before returning his attention to Aizawa. I don't think it'll be a problem. Bubble Girl delivers the message verbally despite Toshinori also watching the exchange. A bead of sweat rolls down the blonde's forehead in disbelief and betrayal of having his prayer shot down so brutally. Slowly, as though he were moving through molasses, Toshinori musters up the will to grab the door handle. He treats the office like he's entering a lion's den, half-heartedly considering buffing up into his muscle form. He hears the tail end of the Shi Hasaikai ceased production on the bullets recently. I doubt it's a coincidence. From Naiteye once he opens the door. Aizawa raises a brow at Toshinori's entrance, but Mirai doesn't turn his head in the slightest. We'll continue our conversation some other time, Eraserhead. Until then, I appreciate your cooperation and my agency will try to show the same hospitality. Mirai leans back in his chair as he brings his hands together, fingers crossing. That seems to be enough, because Aizawa doesn't show any complaints. The tired-looking underground hero simply shrugs and walks past Toshinori with only a small nod of acknowledgement. Once the door closes behind Aizawa, Mirai gestures to the empty seat across from himself using his head. Sit. It sounds too much like a command that Toshinori doesn't even attempt to refuse. The blonde is actually grateful once he does sit, since he's not certain his wobbly legs would have been enough to hold him up for much longer. What brings you by, Toshinori? Naiteye prompts him to speak next. Toshinori can barely hold eye contact for more than a second as he tries to sputter out a response. It's been a while, Mirai. I'm here about. I've begun searching for a potential successor. Naiteye hums, whether it be due to musing for himself or in acknowledgement of Toshinori unclear. He then swivels in his chair, taking in the memorabilia that's decorating the office. Toshinori had been so anxious, he hadn't noticed it until now. All Might posters, statues, collectibles, snow globes, and all sorts of other merchandise covers every square inch. Toshinori remembers and understands why this news is so hard on his former sidekick. Mirai finishes his chair's rotation before digging into the desk's built-in filing cabinet. Now that you've come to your senses, I'll show you who I've already chosen. He lets the folder hit the desk hard enough that it'll fall open on its own. Wherever he goes, laughter is sure to follow. Toshinori peers at the folder's contents, surprised to see the same boy that Nezu had shown him. A third year named Mirio Togata. The profile photo is promising. He has a muscular physique that should already be adequate to handle one for all. Like Toshinori himself, he's got blonde hair. A distinct face with a bright toothy smile. Still, Toshinori can't help but deflate more than he already has. He's not sure why, but he's not 100% sold on the decision made by somebody else. I would like to meet young Togata before making any rash decisions. Toshinori settles on a compromise. It must be logical enough for Naiteye, since he's nodding his head in understanding. Naiteye presses the button on his intercom, leaning close enough to the mic to be heard. Bubble girl, please send Mirio to my office immediately. Toshinori must show his shock in his expression this time since Naiteye explains, I wanted to be certain of his worthiness before recommending him, of course. He interns here at my agency. Toshinori nods in mutual agreement. It's a heavy nod, one burdened with a lot of weight over the previous disagreements, but it moves with an understanding. Tell me about the boy. What else about him caught your eye? He wishes to inquire further about his former sidekick's recommendation before actually meeting Togata himself. The thought crosses his mind that perhaps the reason why Mirai is so intent on this particular person is because, did you use your foresight quirk on him? Naiteye dismisses the slight allegation with a shake of his head, not to see whether or not he'd be your successor. He removes his glasses to clean them before continuing, the truth is. I saw a younger version of yourself in Mirio. His ambition, his smile, his sense of humor, even his power, already so strong, and he uses it responsibly. A sufficient candidate that's ready now, in case there is no later. Toshinori takes a look at the picture of Togata, noting the visual similarities between the boy and himself as well. It's important for a hero to have a smile that can put everyone at ease. At least, that's what Toshinori believes. He sighs, completely understanding Mirai's rational reasoning, but still not completely convinced. You said he already has power. He will already make a great hero. Why not give another person the same chance that was given to me? To get stronger, he clenches his fist and stares at how weak the frail skeletal hand is compared to when he's punching villains with his muscle form. There could be somebody worthy out there who doesn't have the means to be a hero, but does have the heart and desire. Mirai huffs, and Toshinori can't help but assume it's in disappointment. But Mirio is ready. He can become your successor today and be ready today. What if All for One were still alive? Toshinori flinches at the mention of the man who murdered his own master. What if he were to return tomorrow? Or someone as powerful? If you aren't enough, then Mirio would be. Somebody else who isn't prepared now would be a waste. This isn't an investment, Toshinori. Toshinori keeps his hand closed into a tight fist, returning his gaze to it. It's so small when he isn't empowered. It's a gentle thing, almost childish in size. Yet, it's clenched into a fist. It'll punch and fight for justice regardless of how strong it is. Sometimes the world needs a tender touch too. My master allowed me to grow into my power. I didn't become All Might in a day. Mirai opens his mouth to retort but stops short when he sees Toshinori has more to say. A first year could be nurtured given time. A first year has a lot to learn about heroics. A third year has already grown into the hero they're going to be. There is nothing more that you or I will teach them that can change that. Naiteye frowns, but doesn't have any argument to challenge that. In truth, he's too dazed by the reminder that Toshinori can still be wise at times. He'd forgotten that the man in front of him had been his mentor at one time. It's enough to make Mirai cry, but he covers it well by pretending to be shining his glasses. I see your point, is all he can manage without choking on a sob or risking his voice cracking. Fortunately, Mirio chooses that time to join them. He arrives in a sudden and theatrical fashion, head poking through the wall like a ghost. You wanted to see me, sir, he flashes his best smile. Teeth sparkle like pearls, and the glare from the sun reflecting off them makes it blinding. Toshinori is startled by the strange sudden appearance of Mirio's head in a wall, but Mirai is used to these kinds of antics. Yes, please use the door this time. You wouldn't want to wind up naked in front of All Might, would you? Naiteye only directs his attention from the corner of his eye. All Might? Mirio quickly glances around the room, passing over Toshinori. Rather than explaining now, Naiteye thrusts a thumb at the door. You'll see. Yes, sir. Mirio doesn't delay or linger to question further, he vanishes just as quickly as he appeared. Once alone again, Toshinori raises a brow as he asks, naked? A drawback of his quirk, Naiteye rests a hand on his forehead with the temptation to drag it down to his chin. That may not have been the best first impression, but he also knows that Toshinori likes to keep an open mind that will tolerate such an odd introduction. It's just the rest of their meeting that needs to go well. When Mirio returns, this time walking through the door like a normal person, Toshinori can see the boy's hero outfit. A bright yellow number of 1 million stretches across his chest, standing out amongst the stark white of his top half. A red cape trails behind him, completing the Western hero look that All Might himself had adopted, with the boy's lower half being a pair of baggy blue pants. Mirio glances at Toshinori, staggers, and then stops in place. Wait, don't tell me. He snaps his fingers as though he just had an epiphany. I can see the resemblance. You're All Might. Toshinori scratches the back of his head, partly concerned that Togator was able to figure it out so easily and partially impressed that he was able to put two and two together. Yes, young man, it is I. He pushes down his worries and covers them up with a welcoming smile. Would you mind joining us for a moment of your time? Absolutely. It's an honor to meet you. Mirio bows to his waistline before rushing to grab a seat with his superiors. To what do I owe the pleasure? Toshinori glances at Mirai, wondering if he'll do the explaining or if it'll be left up to him. When Naiteye doesn't say anything, the disempowered All Might relents. I wanted to see if you would like to inherit my power. He decides to just jump straight to the point. Besides, he'll be able to tell what kind of person Togator is based on the answer he gives. Mirio blinks once, twice. The room is silent as the third year processes what was just said. Mirio then tilts his head, his confusion being too heavy for his brain. What do you mean, inherit your power? He asks. Toshinori sighs. He figured he'd have to elaborate, but part of him was hoping he'd get to gloss over the exposition part of this. Once again accepting the role that was given to him after double-checking with Mirai, he begins to explain. All Might, the symbol of peace, has to come off as a natural-born hero. As such, I've never disclosed my quirk to the public. He stops when he sees Mirio massaging his temple. For a moment, Toshinori is worried that he's already lost the boy, especially since this is the basic part of the explanation. Come to think of it, there's only ever been theories guessing it's some form of super strength, but is relieved when he realizes that Mirio was simply coming to terms with the shocking truth he'd about to be told. Nodding along, Toshinori rips the rest off like a band-aid. The truth is, my quirk was passed down to me like an Olympic torch. Mirio jumps in surprise like he just received an electric shock and he's now overflowing with loads of questions, but Toshinori holds up a hand that tells him to wait and ask those questions after he finishes. I have the ability to transfer power. That is the quirk that I inherited. It's called One for All. Mirio checks with Mirei, as though he's expecting Naitei to reveal it's all an elaborate hoax. Toshinori is grateful that this prompts his former sidekick to explain the rest. The first person cultivates the power, and then passes it on to another. The next refines it and passes it on again. It becomes an everlasting network of power, saving him the trouble. This stockpiling quirk is what makes me so strong. Now, I wish to pass it on to you, Mirio Togator. What do you say? Toshinori chimes back in to remind the boy why he's being told all these secrets in the first place. Toshinori must admit he's surprised when he sees Mirio's smile fall flat. He would have expected anyone to desperately and greedily jump at the opportunity of receiving his power. I honestly don't know. This is all so much. Why me? Do I even deserve that honor? He places a hand over where his heart is, but the movement draws Toshinori's eye to the number printed across the boy's chest. Toshinori sees Mirei is about to say something, probably to alleviate the boy's concerns, but he holds up a hand to stop him. He wants to take it upon himself and use this as his own opportunity to see what Mirio is all about. Tell me, young man. What does that number mean on your chest? He points to the bright yellow font. Mirio looks down, seemingly have forgotten the number was there until now. When he looks back up, his face shows an expression of determination that wasn't there before. It's not the same hopeful smile that Toshinori saw earlier, but rather one with an actual drive to achieve that hope. I want to save 1 million people, he declares. Toshinori feels the corners of his mouth tugging upwards into a smile before he can even laugh. He can't hold it in, this feeling in his gut. He lets out a mighty guffaw as his body flexes into its muscle form. Pleased with Mirio Togator and finding the same sense of humor that led Mirei to choosing him as a worthy successor, All Might grins ear to ear. Young Togator, with One for All, you will save more than 1 million people, he declares as part of his acceptance of the third year. Meanwhile, Akitani Mikumo is focusing on saving just one person. He wants to protect the little girl that's swaddled in so many blankets that he worries she might get cooked from the heat. As soon as they got back, she was fast asleep. Eri had taken over the room that had once been his, occupying the space as her own. He doesn't mind a single bit though. It's not like he slept much there anyways. Besides, he has much more pressing matters if he's to protect Eri. He doesn't know who exactly he's saving her from, but he's assuming it's the Yakuza. After devouring the man who had been stalking him, he found a burlap sack in their back pocket. It wasn't just a bag though. It's a mask, designed to look like a scarecrow's horrorish face. It's no bird beak, but he doesn't think it's a coincidence for someone carrying a freshly made mask to cross paths with him, Eri, and Himiko. He figures the best way to test his hypothesis and get answers is to ask Uta himself. He'll show him the mask and see if he recognizes it. If he's right about the Yakuza still poking their beaks where they don't belong, then he'll know who to kill. He hadn't really considered what he'd do if Uta isn't associated with this particular mask, but that'll at least let him know there's some other enemies to look out for. Akitani shoves the burlap mask into his own back pants pocket while heading for the window. Based on how long Eri slept the previous night, he figures he'll have enough time to visit Uta and return without her knowing he ever left. He's just about to dive into the night when he hears something that stops him in his tracks though. He pauses and listens carefully. He heard what sounded like a whimper. It's the sound of a frightened child. Eri, Akitani bursts towards where she's sleeping with a boost of his quirk's power. Tendrils sprout from his back and pull him forward quicker. His uncovered eye blazes red in the dark void that surrounds it. When he crashes through the door, ready to shred anyone on the other side who isn't Eri, he's surprised to find no one. The only thing terrorizing the child is a nightmare that makes her shudder in her sleep. He knows that the commotion he's made will wake her, so he quickly retracts his predatory organ and covers his eye with his hand as not to scare her any further. Eri tosses the bundle of covers off herself, kicking in a panicked frenzy. Akatani gasps when he sees the tiny horn on her head is beginning to grow bigger. It glows faintly at first, like a dim nightlight, but gradually grows brighter until it lights up the entire room. No, no, make it stop, Eri screams with tears in her eyes. He doesn't know what's happening, except that she's terrified. He rushes to her side, wrapping his arms around her, hoping that the hug feels protective and not crushing. She squirms as she cries, "Get away. Don't," and he almost does let her go. But he sees the absent twinkle in her red eyes, and what replaces it? He knows that what she's afraid of isn't him. Her horn increasing in size with its bright glow must be her quirk, and he knows firsthand what it's like to be ashamed of your own quirk. So he pulls her closer. He holds her tight and lets her know, "It's okay. Your quirk doesn't scare me. It won't hurt me." He feels her head shaking against his chest in protest, but he doesn't stop. "I'm not going anywhere. You don't have to worry about losing me." Eri continues to sob louder than his words. She ceases her attempts to break loose from his hold though. She must still hear him, because she no longer shakes her head in protest. The tiny horn on her head recedes as it glows fainter, losing its prior power. Akatani just keeps holding onto her. He doesn't let go and he doesn't stop repeating that he won't. They stay there, huddled on the floor. Neither one keeps track of how long. Neither one cares. Eri cries until she can't anymore, the amount of time that takes seemingly as endless as it is brief. Akatani holds her the entire time, not wanting to ever stop anyways. Akatani knows better than to ask her about her quirk. He knows from experience not to pry. But he does want to help her. He knows he has to if she's getting nightmares this bad. So, he thinks of a place he hadn't thought of or been back to in a long time. He thinks of taking her there. "You know, Eri, I was scared of my quirk too." He keeps his voice barely above a whisper and as gentle as possible. The little girl unburies her face from his chest to look up at him, curiosity getting the better of her, surprise evident in her expression. Seeing her now, he knows it'll help her to know she isn't the only one who's had this problem. He makes his decision and asks her, "Would you like to know how I got a little more used to it?" It's a small group of people sitting in a circle of fold-up chairs. Some familiar to Akatani, some just as new to him as they are to Eri. Most have mutation quirks that affect their physical appearance. Eri takes interest in most of them and they delightfully wave to her, making her shyly recoil to hide behind Akatani's legs when they do. It's a quirk support group. A place to share your insecurities. A safe and caring environment with people who can relate. You don't have to say anything. You can just listen. It's the first thing he tells Eri to make her feel comfortable. He then takes her to get a snack from the vending machine and a canned coffee for himself. There he finds a boy who appears to be about his own age. The boy also looks just as sleep-deprived as him, despite the wild case of bedhead. "Hi, are you new here?" Akatani tries to be friendly so he can show Eri how to be sociable at the very least. The indigo-haired boy looks bothered but answers anyways, "No. You." Akatani glances at Eri, and then back up at the boy. "I used to attend regularly, but stopped for a while." He then gestures to the little girl in order to introduce her. "I'm mostly back for my sister." The boy notices Akatani's pause, raising a brow. He's not aware that Akatani still hasn't gotten used to referring to Eri as such yet. "Is the coffee also for her?" he asks. Akatani laughs, not entirely sure if that's a joke or not, but stopping himself when he sees the other boy isn't laughing along. "That'd be mine," he says while cracking the can's lid open to take a sip. "Can't live without it." Despite not getting the subtle inside joke, the boy still smiles. "I can relate." He brandishes his own can of coffee before adding, "I'm Hitoshi Shinso, by the way." "Nice to meet you, Shinso." Akatani smiles in return. "I'm Akatani Mikumo." He gestures to Eri again, "And this is Eri," before bowing. "Well, Mikumo, can I expect to hear your two stories tonight?" Shinso tilts his head like a curious cat. Akatani can't speak for Eri, but he doesn't hesitate with his own answer. "No, that will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.